Hi students, welcome to Easy Elimu Learning Simplified. My name is Mbide, and in this session we're going to learn about sentences, how to write a good sentence, what to consider when putting words together to construct a sentence. Before we proceed, let us start by defining what a sentence is. And a sentence is a group of words that express a complete idea. A group of words that express a complete idea. A group of words that when put together make sense. One characteristic of a sentence is that a sentence always begins with a capital letter and it ends with either a full stop, a question mark, or an exclamation mark. That is very, very important to note. And a sentence also has at the very least, a subject and a verb. When you hear the words subject, verb, object in a sentence, what comes to mind? A subject is the doer of the action. For example, a sentence like, Susan walks to school. In that sentence, Susan is the subject. A verb is the action. So in our sentence, Susan walks to school. Walks is the action, it's the verb. The action that's done by the subject, which is Susan. Susan is the subject, walks is the verb. And lastly, object is what or who is affected by the action. Susan walks to school. School in that sentence is the object. So for a sentence to make complete sense, it must have a subject and a verb. An object sometimes is optional, and we are going to look at two different scenarios. We are going to look at examples of sentences that have only a subject and a verb. And then we are going to look at sentences that have a subject, a verb, and an object. So let us start with sentences that have a subject and a verb only. Susan walks. Susan is the subject. Walks is the verb. Stella drives. Stella is the subject. Drives is the verb. And lastly, Aisha is eating. Aisha is the subject. Is eating is the verb. We can also have subjects that sentences that have a subject, a verb, and an object. For example, the doctor examined the patient. The doctor examined the patient. So the doctor is the subject. Examined is the verb. The patient is the object. Remember when we defined an object, we said an object is what or who is affected by the subject. So the doctor examined the patient. So this action happened to the patient. I put the book on the table. I put the book on the table. Susan is walking to school. Susan is the subject. Is walking is the verb or the action. To school is the object. And lastly, I am running to the shop. I is the subject. Running is the verb or the action. The shop is the object. So I hope you're able to now understand what an object is. When you say object in sentences, what do we mean? It is what is affected by the action. So in the introduction, we said that a sentence is a group of words that make sense. We said a sentence begins with a capital letter, ends with a full stop, a question mark, or an exclamation mark. We have also said a sentence requires a subject and a verb, and in some cases, an object. Another thing that sentences require is sometimes we need to use conjunctions to connect different parts of a sentence. These different parts are called clauses, and you're going to learn more about them in Form 2. Some conjunctions include if, so, because, although, unless, and, but, or. So if we say, Anne is running so that she is not late for school. If you remove the word so in that sentence, it will not make sense. Anne is running not late to school does not make sense. But when you say Anne is running so that she is not late to school, it now makes sense. Or if you ask somebody, do you want tea or coffee? Do you want tea or coffee? It makes sense. So those two parts of the sentence, do you want tea and coffee, have been connected together or linked together by the word or, and or is a conjunction. So it is important to note that in some instances you may need to use conjunctions to join the different parts of your sentence for your sentence to make sense. And the last thing is that we need to punctuate our sentence correctly. We need to know, number one, how to punctuate the sentence, two, what punctuation mark to use, and three, where to place the punctuation mark so that it makes grammatical sense. And when we learned about the uses of the comma, we saw that if you put a comma at the wrong part of the sentence, then it changes the meaning, the intended meaning of that sentence. Or if you put a comma in a sentence that did not have a comma, then it can have a whole new meaning. So we can have a look at these sentences and attempt to correct them for them to make grammatical sense. There was no food at home, I slept hungry. There was no food at home, I slept hungry. That sentence, if you put a full stop after the word home, there was no food at home, I slept hungry. That can make sense. Or if you say, there was no food at home, so I slept hungry, it can also make sense. So you can either add a punctuation mark or a conjunction. The second sentence, I couldn't believe it. The story which my friend told us. So to correct it, we say, I couldn't believe the story which my friend told us. So we will drop the word it, and also there in that the story there starts with a small letter T because it is in the middle of a sentence. So I couldn't believe the story which my friend told us. Do you want to eat now? To watch the program? So we need to put a conjunction somewhere in this sentence. So, do you want to eat now or to watch the program? And lastly, I failed the test. I had not read for it. We also need a conjunction here. I failed the test because I had not read for it. That's it for the sentences. I hope you're able to now construct grammatically correct sentences. You now know what you need to look out for: punctuation marks, conjunctions, a subject and a verb. So for further practice, you can have a look at that quiz. In properly formed sentences, write a composition on the following topic: the importance of conserving forests. Thank you for tuning in, and see you in the next class, where we will be learning about paragraphs and how to write grammatically correct paragraphs.